It's thought the house was built in 1830, but in recent years it had become a haven for vagrants and street kids.
Get something like 9 street kids in there partying, from 15, 14-year-olds. And some of them actually stood over the fence there last night and watched it burn.
The property was bought by the Girl Guides Association about 3 years ago. It was keen to see the house demolished, but the Heritage Council of New South Wales was determined to restore it.
It is fairly rare because there are very few of them of that age, and coupled with that, it's also associated with George Turner, one of the early pioneers and a veteran of the Napoleonic Wars.
The Heritage Council had been negotiating with the Guides Association for more than 12 months, but this morning's fire has ended the argument once and for all. Parents say they're relieved the dangerously dilapidated building no longer exists.
Children do come here and play with the spare area here, and there's been numerous fires in the property or near it, and it should have been demolished years ago.
Representatives from the Sydney head office of the State Pollution Control Commission were in Newcastle today conducting a training seminar for local council officers. But it appears while legislation now allows for tough new on-the-spot littering and noise pollution fines, it is virtually impossible to prosecute a major industry like BHP for polluting. Each year, industries have their pollution control licences renewed by the SPCC, but according to Commission spokesman Richard Guest, the standards set are unattainable.
BHP, like many other companies, have had virtually unprosecutable licences.
But the Commission claims this will change under BHP's new licence, in force on the 1st of next month.
If they exceed their licence, we will be able to prosecute.
In fact, Mr Guest admits that if a similar coke oven gas leak occurs after the new licence is introduced, BHP will be prosecuted.
But under the new licence, it would be a high probability that we would go ahead with a prosecution.
Also today, revelations by the SPCC that no tests of the coke oven gas were ever taken. The Commission does not have its own air quality monitoring system and instead relies on quarterly reports from BHP. The day of the gas leak, the wind was blowing towards Stockton and consequently the monitoring station at Waratah did not pick up the pollution cloud. Under its new licence, BHP will be required to hand over all air quality results, and the State Pollution Control Commission guarantees those findings will be made public. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Mr Pickering also seized the opportunity to renew his attack on the customs service operating at both Newcastle and Port Kembla. Echoing the sentiments he expressed at this time last year, the Police Minister pinpointed the ports as havens of lax security used by international drug smugglers.
The federal government has literally closed down its customs barriers in places like Port Kembla Harbour, Newcastle Harbour, where it's a free go for people to walk off ships with whatever they like. At the moment, I find that most objectionable because we then have to spend far more dollars catching the material in places like King's Cross.
No one at the Newcastle Customs Office was willing to comment on the accusations, but a Sydney spokesperson has labelled the claims politically motivated. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
For some of the musicians, Newcastle is familiar territory. Brooke Avery, formerly of Adamstown, plays the trumpet. She was a marching koala.
Koalas was more fun because you were younger.
Two other members have followed the same musical path as Brooke. Peter Shillett from Swansea and Adam Oberg from Muswellbrook are also former koalas.
In some respects it's a lot the same with the discipline and the marching and the playing and all that. But in other ways, it's a bit more fun. You get to go more places. Like we're older people.
The Navy Band will be in Brisbane on Friday to welcome home the Sydney and the Brisbane, which are returning from duty in the Gulf.
It'll be pretty emotional. Everybody will be hyped up. All the boys are coming home. The wives and the girlfriends will all be crying because they miss them and they've been away for so long.
It looks like a sea of confusion, but it's designed to be just the opposite. 4,000 Year 10 and 12 students from the Central Coast's 20 high schools took advantage of the advice on offer to help them make one of the most vital decisions of their lives.
This is the time that they're making the critical decisions. Either they're leaving in Year 10 or they're going into Year 11, and really the students going on to Year 11 have to know what they're thinking of a little further along, so they pick the right subjects in Year 11, and of course the Year 12s, they're in their final Year 2.
Almost 300 booths offered inside information on a wide variety of job and study options. The message this year was to choose a flexible career path.
As the economy tightens up and restrictions start to come in, students have to become a bit more flexible and a bit more willing to look at other alternatives, and of course a market like this is what this is all about.
At times it looked like organised mayhem, but there were plenty of satisfied students at the end of the day.
It's cleared a lot of questions I've wanted to answer. I've picked out a career of carpentry.
It's made me decide I want to become a session musician.
It's helped in a way because it was a lot of confusion, and they've helped by answering questions that we asked, and I'd like to do secretarial work.
Most Americans would be accustomed to seeing elephants at the zoo, but now there's a new type of elephant. Topiary animals have arrived at California's San Diego Zoo and have been mixed in with their real-life counterparts. There's the one-horned rhino, who sits calmly even while having his eyelashes trimmed, the green flamingo, a distant relation of the pink variety, and even the humble koala rates a pair of green friends. The animals are made by covering metal frames with moss, then adding ivy or some other plant as a coat. It's meant a bit more work for the zoo's horticulturalists, but a lot less for the keepers. The animals don't make any noise, don't try to escape, and don't need feeding, just water.
The parliamentarians have been right around the country checking the efficiency and performance of our major ports. Today they got a water level view of Newcastle, which, according to local member Peter Morris, can't fail to impress his peers.
It has ready access to the north of Sydney, the northwest of Sydney. It can play a much greater role in the handling of cargo such as wool, general cargo, possibly containers, because it's congestion free, because it works efficiently, because geographically it's well placed.
Tomorrow the committee will hear how unions and lobby groups believe the operation of the port could be improved. The Newcastle Chamber of Commerce believes all the hard work has already been done.
The areas of the port that would be used for cargo handling are already connected to rail, so the basic infrastructure's there. It requires only an incremental investment to bring them up to top condition.
Mr Goldstiver says he'll take advantage of tomorrow's forum to press home a common sense case for greater use of the port.
Newcastle and the Hunter region is now sitting on the edge of the biggest market in Australia. We're linked to it by a road that's in very good condition. It means that a truck can get to Sydney and into the Sydney market area within an hour and a half of Newcastle.
It seems people's patience with the parking restrictions in central Newcastle has finally expired.
I'm often short of 10 cents, well it's 20 cents for me.
City centre traders say if they're to keep up with the suburban shopping centres, the situation will have to change.
If we can say to the shopper, here's a simple way to come into the CBD of Newcastle, spend your dollars here, that it's just as easy to come to the Newcastle city as it is to go to a suburban shopping centre.
The Chamber of Commerce wants the council to give shoppers 2 hours free parking in its King Street station. Last year, fees from the station contributed more than $332,000 to the council coffers, and it stands to lose a good portion of that if the plan is approved.
To give it a really good test, 12 months period would have to be around about the mark so that we can make the convenience widely known to people and then they can get used to coming in here.
A submission will be presented to the council sometime this week. Lord Mayor John McNaughton today said although the plan had been tried and failed in the past, that didn't mean it wouldn't work this time. He admitted the loss of revenue might be a stumbling block, but said the idea had definite merit and deserved council's full consideration. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
A sight so rare last year, a Falcons win. But already in season 1991, the Falcons have notched victories over Hobart and Canberra and only went down by 2 points to unbeaten competition leaders Southern Melbourne in Melbourne. And the way they have controlled the two home games has everyone buzzing with excitement, especially the capacity crowd at the stadium 48 hours ago. For some, it's a welcome change.
It's making for some relaxing Sundays for a change. It was a good game.
They did play well.
I thought we played another good control game all of the way through. Our key players came through, but everybody contributed.
The superstar of Saturday was Jerry Everett. With only 5 points to his name at half-time, he came out blazing to hit an amazing 23 in the third term and finished the night game-high scorer with 40.
I was shooting them the way I normally shoot, and I kept my head up because I was getting kind of negative there, so I just hung in there and, wait till they fall. That's all I could do.
But ask Jerry, James Bullock, Al Green and Michael Johnson about the match and they will rave over the tremendous team effort. For MJ, who was instrumental in many combination plays, he's enjoying his new role.
My game has changed a bit and we've got plenty of scoring power now, so it's not that important for me to just shoot the ball every time. So I'm getting to the role which I prefer, and that's an all-round type of role where I can throw some passes and help out in the boards a little bit more, and it's a game I enjoy, and the winning also helps.
There's that much confidence in the camp at the moment, they are serious in saying they can do the unthinkable, beat Adelaide and Perth next weekend and become the first team in the NBL to win both matches on the Doomsday Double.
The James Patterson Street home's back onto a shifting sea of sand, which residents say was well enough left alone for more than 20 years. Hummocks of introduced bitu bush had bound the dunes and kept their advance to a minimum. Under a $250,000 native plant stabilisation and employment scheme, the bitu bush was bulldozed and seagrass, fences and walkways established. Now that work has all but disappeared. The residents feel their homes will go the same way.
I give 2 to 3 years and the sand will be in our backyards, ready to move into our houses.
We've put everything we own into that house. We sold everything that we'd ever had. And at present it's for sale. Well, that's a bit of a joke. Until they do something about the sand, there's no way in the world that it's worth anything.
The Department of Soil Conservation, which is responsible for the dunes, admits it's stumped. A committee of government departments has been formed hoping to turn back the tide. But residents are banking on a local sand contractor being allowed to dig them out.
All that's left now, if they want to save our houses, and maybe even Anna Bay, I mean, it's ridiculous. They're going to have to move it out in trucks. That's all that's left now. It's sad, but that's all that's left.
It's been 3 years since the restoration of the Civic Theatre in Hunter Street was first proposed. Since then, around 300 concerts and plays have been performed to an audience of almost 250,000. But over the years, the theatre has deteriorated, and it's estimated up to $13 million is now needed to restore it to its glory, as well as to meet current fire and safety standards. Council has already committed $2 million towards the work and will ask the state and federal governments for a further $8 million. It's hoped another $2 million plus will be raised through public appeal. A gala concert to launch the fundraising is planned for the end of July, with Dame Joan Sutherland the guest of honour. At this stage, though, she hasn't said she'll come out of retirement and sing, but her husband Richard Bonney will conduct the Hunter Orchestra, which will accompany 4 other opera singers. It's hoped $150,000 will be raised on this night alone, with tickets $100 each. Fire crackled through the small weatherboard cottage shortly after 2:30.
We come out of the school canteen and we just saw flames and we thought it was someone starting their fire inside, and then all of a sudden just seeing great shoots of flames, so we just come running down the road and there was people all around with hoses and everything.
Nearby residents tried to control the blaze with garden hoses, but realising they were fighting a losing battle, turned their attention to their own homes, dragging furniture and clothing into the yard. Firefighters could do little to save the house. Their main concern was protecting the properties on either side. Thick black smoke billowed into the air, making it difficult to see and dangerous for firefighters trying to dodge falling corrugated iron sheets. The rented house was unoccupied at the time of the blaze, the real estate agent discovering his efforts were too late.
It's not going to do much good, is it?
Adjacent houses were damaged by smoke and heat. At one stage, though, firefighters thought it would be far worse.
The main thing we were worried about were the exposures on either side. It did look, for a time there, it did look like it could enter the place directly behind me.
It's believed the blaze started in the living room near the television. Investigations are continuing. These are the exhaust pipes that have blown an ill wind on the safety record of the State Transit Authority buses. It's claimed in some cases they're angled to blow fumes backwards rather than down, allowing them to be sucked into the exhaust system and then pumped back out into the cabin. Not a pleasant prospect, but one made all the more alarming at a health conference 10 days ago, where one expert claimed those diesel fumes were potentially carcinogenic.
If our members are being exposed to those and the passengers are being exposed to those, well, we believe that's unacceptable. If I was a passenger, I wouldn't be sitting on the back seat of the bus for a while.
Dave Winwood of the Australian Tramways and Motor Omnibus Employees Association said his union immediately inspected the buses and found signs of emissions. He says the union then went to Newcastle Buses asking that something be done. But the union says Newcastle Buses was just a little bit too eager to respond. It says it had the worst case pulled off the road, repaired and repainted before it could be examined. Newcastle Buses says the union should make up its mind whether it wants action or just plain evidence.
We've started a replacement program of those exhaust pipes. We have also changed our work practices in the yard so that bus drivers don't walk into a bus covered in fumes from the bus that started up alongside it.
When the consultancy firm Enviro Sciences was called in, it conducted a round of tests on the fumes, the results of which are expected in about 2 weeks. However, today, Richard Farwood, acting general manager of Newcastle Buses, said they will begin a new round of tests tomorrow morning, aimed at gauging the effects in a real working environment.
We're testing in a worst possible case a bus full of fumes so that we can evaluate what the particles are and if there are any carcinogens in that. We're also evaluating what is the normal situation at start-up at our busiest times. And not only that, we're going to test the inside of buses as it buses out on the road in its normal traffic so that we can monitor what is filtered in the rear of the bus.
Since the earthquake, the future of this block of buildings has been in the balance. 3 sites on the corner of Burwood and Hunter Streets were knocked down last year, and last night Council gave the go-ahead for the demolition of a further 5. The only building given a reprieve is the Frederick Ash site, which has a conservation order placed on it. However, it too could go if Council has its way. Discussions with the New South Wales Director of Planning will take place within the next few weeks. Also among those to be downed is the Brown Derby restaurant. Although Council does not own the site, negotiations with the owner will take place as soon as possible. But the building causing the most concern is the Clarendon Hotel. It suffered very little earthquake damage and, according to the licensee, Vi Lane, is a viable concern.
I'm just devastated to think that while it's operative and there's no approved DA, that there should be another unsightly hole in the ground like on the corner of Burwood Street.
Both the Building Trades Group and the National Trust have opposed Council's decision to remove the hotel. After an inspection this morning, the Building Trades Group placed a 3-week ban on demolition until discussions with Council take place.
Well, there's no earthquake damage with this building, none at all. As far as we're concerned, the Clarendon stays.
As yet, Council has no plans for the site once it is cleared. Expressions of interest will be called in 6 months. Local community groups, though, see it as just another hole in the city.
There's no need to demolish at the moment. We've got too many empty blocks in Newcastle. It looks like a bombed out city, and this Clarendon is a viable proposition. Surely that's what we want in the centre of Newcastle.